Book of Heaven, Volume 11. The 12th of June to the 27th of August, 1913. Page 56 to 61. June 12, 1913. The effects of fusing oneself in Jesus, taking part in His work. This produces the life of the divine will and the life of the divine love in the soul. Therefore the Most Holy Trinity is formed in her. While I was praying, I was uniting my mind to the mind of Jesus, my eyes to those of Jesus, and so forth with everything else, with the intention of doing what Jesus did with His mind, with His eyes, with His mouth, with His heart, and so forth. And as it seemed that the mind of Jesus, His eyes, etc. were spreading themselves for the good of all, it also seemed that I too was spreading myself for the good of all, uniting and identifying myself with Jesus. Now, I was thinking to myself, what kind of meditation is this? What prayer? I am no longer good at anything. I am not even able to reflect on something. While I was thinking of this, my always adorable Jesus told me, "My daughter, what? Are you afflicting yourself with this? Instead of troubling yourself, you should be happy, because when you were meditating at other times, and many beautiful reflections arose within your mind, you did nothing other than take part in me, in my qualities and in my virtues. Now, since the only thing left to you is the opportunity of uniting and identifying yourself with me, you take everything from me. Unable to do any good by yourself, with me you become good at everything, because desiring and wanting good produce strength in the soul which makes her grow, and which settles her in the divine life. Then, by uniting and identifying herself with me, she unites with my mind, producing many lives of holy thoughts in the minds of the creatures. As she unites with my eyes, she produces many lives of holy glances in the creatures. In the same way, if she unites with my mouth, she will give life to the words. If she unites to my heart, my desires, my hands, my steps, she will give a life for every heartbeat, life to desires, to actions, to steps. But holy lives, since I contain within me creative power, and therefore the soul, together with me, creates and does whatever I do. Now, this union with me, part to part, mind to mind, heart to heart, etc. produces in you, in the highest degree, the life of my will and of my love. The Father is formed in this will, and the Holy Spirit in this love, while the Son is formed by the operation, the words, the works, the thoughts, and by all the rest that can come from this will and from this love. Here is the Trinity in the souls. In this way, if we need to operate, it is indifferent whether we operate within the Trinity in heaven, or within the Trinity of the souls on earth. This is why I keep taking everything else away from you, although they may be good and holy things, to give you the best and the holiest, myself, and to make of you another myself, as much as this is possible for the creature. I believe you won't lament any more, will you? And Jesus, Jesus. I feel, rather, that I have become awful bad, and the worst is that I am unable to find this badness of mine, so that, at least, I would do anything I can to cast it away. And Jesus, stop. Do not go too deeply into the thought of yourself. Think of me, and I will take care of your badness too. Have you understood? June 24, 1913. The soul who has no appetite for good. The soul who has no appetite for good, feels a sort of nausea and repulsion for good itself. Therefore, these souls are the refuse of God. August 20, 1913. One who lives in the divine will must have trust, simplicity and disinterest in giving to all. Her life and her work are ended, because the divine will consecrates her and transubstantiates her. While I was praying, I saw my always adorable Jesus within me, and many souls around me, who were saying, "Lord, you have placed everything in this soul." And stretching their hands toward me, they said, "Since Jesus is in you, and all his goods are with him, take them and give them to us." I remained confused, and blessed Jesus told me, "My daughter, all possible goods are contained in my will, and it is necessary for the soul who lives in it to be in it with trust, operating as owner together with me. Creatures expect everything from this soul, and if they don't receive, they feel defrauded. But how can she give if she does not operate together with me in complete confidence? Therefore, trust in giving. Simplicity in communicating herself to all. Disinterest for herself, to be able to live completely for me and for her neighbor are necessary for the soul who lives in my will. Such am I. Then he added, "My daughter, it happens to one who does my will as to a grafted tree. The power of the graft has the virtue of destroying the life of the tree which receives the graft. Therefore, one can no longer see the fruits and the leaves of the first tree, but those of the graft. And if the first tree said to the graft, 'I want to keep at least a little branch, so that I too will be able to give some fruits, in order to make everybody know that I still exist,' the graft would say, 'You have no more reason to exist after you submitted yourself to receive my graft. Life will be all mine.' In the same way, the soul who does my will can say, 'My life is ended. I will no longer produce my works, my thoughts, my words, but the works, thoughts and words of the one whose will is my life.' Therefore, I say to the one who does my will, 'You are my life, my blood, my bones.' The true, real, sacramental transformation takes place, not by virtue of the words of the priest, but by virtue of my will. As soon as the soul decides to live in my volition, my will creates myself within the soul, and as my will flows in the will, works and steps of the soul, she undergoes as many of my creations. It happens just as to a pyx full of consecrated particles, there are as many Jesuses for as many particles, one for each particle. In the same way, by virtue of my will, the soul contains myself in her whole being, as well as in each particle of it. One who does my will fulfills the true eternal communion, a communion with complete fruit." August 27, 1913. Snares and rage of the devil against the soul who lives in and speaks about the divine will, pushing other people against her. She must not feel disturbed, because she has Jesus with her. Finding myself in my usual state, I was lamenting with my always adorable Jesus about my poor current state, and with all the bitterness of my soul I told him, "Life of my life, you no longer have compassion for me. Why live? You don't want to use me any more, all is over. My bitterness is so intense and so great that I feel petrified for the pain. And what is worse is that while I remain all abandoned in your arms, as if I didn't give a thought to my great misfortune. The others, and you know who they are, whisper in my ear, 'How is this? Why? It might be that you've committed sins. You've been inattentive.' What is worse is that, while they say this to me, I feel that I don't want to hear them, as if they interrupted the sleep in which you keep me in the arms of your will. Ah, Jesus, maybe you did not pay attention to how hard this pain is for me, otherwise you would come to my aid." And I told him many more silly things. Then blessed Jesus told me, "My daughter, poor daughter of mine, they want to sadden you, don't they? Ah, my daughter, I do so much to keep you at peace, and they want to disturb you. No, no. Know that if you dared to offend me, I would be the first one to be saddened, and the first one to tell you. So, if I do not say anything, don't worry. But do you want to know who is the cause of this? The devil. He is consumed with rage. And every time you speak about the effects of my will to those who approach you, he blows up in fury and, unable to approach directly the one who does my will, he goes around, approaching those who can get close to you under the appearance of good, in order to obtain at least the miserable purpose of disturbing the serene heaven of the soul in whom I delight to dwell. So, he thunders and lightnings from afar, thinking of doing something, but, unhappy him. The power of my will breaks his legs, making those thunders and lightnings fall upon himself. So he remains more furious than before. Furthermore, what you say is not true. What's the purpose of my state? You must know that, for the soul who really does my will, the virtue of my will is so great that if I get close to the place where that soul is in order to send chastisements, finding there my will and my own love, I don't feel like punishing myself in that soul. Rather, I remain wounded and I faint. So, instead of chastising, I throw myself in the arms of that soul, who contains my will and my love. I rest and I remain all cheered. Ah, if you knew into what constraints of love you put me, and how much I suffer when I see you the least bit saddened or disturbed because of me. You would be more content, and the others would abstain from bothering you. And do you see, O Jesus, how much evil I do, to the extent of making you suffer? And soon Jesus, my daughter, don't be troubled for this. Sufferings which come from the love of the soul contain also great joys, because true love, though it brings sufferings, is never separated from great joy and unspeakable contentments.